The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, before we get started, a quick public service announcement from wisp.org.
Hey everyone, Rachel Toback here, Chair of the Board for Women in Security and Privacy, also known as WISP, and I want to tell you about an opportunity to get involved in the community. On Friday, June 26th, the security community came together to lift and amplify the stories and work of Black security and privacy practitioners on Twitter and LinkedIn through the hashtag #ShareTheMicInCyber campaign, which was organized by Camille Stewart and Lauren Zaberick. In response to this campaign, we started raising funds for Najla, who was my partner in the campaign, also known as 4Sci_Q on Twitter, to sit for the PMP, OSCP, and CISSP. We ended up raising the $2,000 to cover Najla's expenses, and we're now moving on to cover as many training, certification, and learning or advancement expenses as possible, incurred by Black security and privacy practitioners in the Share the Mic and Cyber group. As of right now, on July 6th, we have $16,000 raised and about $26,000 in needs for the community. Please consider a donation or a corporate sponsorship to cover these expenses. You can head on over to tinyurl.com/sharewisp for our donation page, or you can go on our Twitter page @wisp.org so you can see the full donation link yourself. You're security-minded, probably want to see the full URL. I get it. Thanks so much for taking action, and I'll see you on the internet.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, Miss Berlin, Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hello.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey. Back to full strength. I know last week everybody got to hear just me talking to Brad Spangler about Linux kernel security and how much of a mess that is. Yeah, that was kind of interesting. You know, you hear about all these organizations that are doing everything that they can, governance boards and collaborative tooling, and making sure that controls are in place so people aren't pushing things. Linux kernel is just kind of all up in the air, and no real governance there in terms of managing that stuff. And having to manage 5 different versions of a Linux kernel's kind of awful. And considering the oldest kernels are missing some security patches and functionality, and they're not all backwards parity. There's no parity in the 5 kernels, so. It was kind of interesting, very eye-opening. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go back and download that. So, Ms. Berlin, Mr. Betcher, how are y'all doing this week?
Not too bad.
Yeah, same.
Yeah? That's cool. We're recording this on the 26th of July, and apparently I failed a geography today because I'd read that Hurricane Hannah had, hit South Padre Island, Texas, or something like that. And I hit Miss Berlin up because her son is at, Marine Corps boot camp. And I was like, "Is your son okay? I know it's only Category 1." And she's like, he's in North Carolina." And I was like,
"Yeah.
Oh, God, I suck." Okay.
I mean, Army boot camps in Texas.
I do not know why I thought Marine Corps boot camp was in South Padre Island, Texas, of all places. But,
yeah. So my one of my son's best friends is currently in boot camp in the Army.
Okay.
So he might be being affected. I don't know.
It's only Category 1, so it's like 74 mile an hour winds gusting, to whatever. But it's not that awful. I actually have a friend who's down in that right now, and she was doing like the Weather Channel thing where she was outside and it was windy and she's just getting buffeted by winds and such. And it was okay. If it would have been a Cat 5 or Cat 3 or something like that, that'd have been much worse. So.
Yep. Yeah, he's got 8 weeks left.
8 weeks? How long is it?
13.
Oh shit. Okay.
13 weeks plus another 2.5 for quarantine.
Right. Okay. I think Navy boot camp was only 8 weeks. I think that may have been what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Okay. Mr. Betcher, how are you doing, sir?
Not too bad.
How's working, incident response at a company when you're at home?
It's okay.
That's good.
I mean, I'm sure most people do it, right?
Hey,
Working
Hey,
from
Mrs.
home and
Betcher.
stuff.
Anyway, so gonna have an interview this week. Actually, reached out to this gentleman probably the first of the year around Christmas time when the internet and Twitter blew up about some offensive tools that were released. And I wanted to have him on, and I wanted to have somebody else on who would, talk about not releasing those tools. And the more and more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I don't want it to turn into a Fox News shouting match because it's what it kind of started sounding like on Twitter. So we had Dave Kennedy on to talk about offensive tool release because he's got the pen tester framework, social engineering toolkit, and, all those other things. But, I've known this gentleman for years. I have high respect for him because he does a lot of great work with SANS and with tools that he's created himself. And I'd like to welcome Mick Douglas to the show.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey.
Hey. Mr. Betcher apparently had some internet trouble, so he got kicked off. So he'll be back on shortly. But Mick, for those people who don't know you, can you tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Mick Douglas. You can follow me on Twitter at BetterSafetyNet. And I'm the founder and managing partner of InfoSec Innovations. We're a boutique security consulting firm. We are a purple company. We do both offense and defense. And then in my copious spare time, I'm a SANS instructor, and I'm also a member of the INS faculty.
Nice. Yeah, you're we're doing this on the 26th of July. You're actually teaching a class starting tomorrow, so that's kind of cool. SANS course. Fantastic. All right. So one of the reasons we wanted to have you on, I think, came from a discussion about, again, there was a minor ripple in the Twitter force about offensive tool release concerning powercat. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about what powercat is?
Sure. So powercat is a PowerShell implementation of Netcat. And really, at its core, all it does is open two sockets, and you can shove data in and get data out. That's it. It just makes it so that you can add stuff into the PowerShell pipeline and make data either be received or consumed from the network. And then the fun of the tool is, depending on how you configure it, you can do a variety of twists with it. And one thing that is kind of fun about it is that it does support automated relays, which is something that Luke Baggett implemented. A lot of the functions of the PowerCat that people are used to, the version that everybody is aware of, is actually largely Luke's idea. But I wrote the initial version, and then he made some suggestions, jammed on it, and kept on improving. And so that's basically PowerCat in a nutshell.
Okay. And why do we need a PowerShell version of Netcat when Netcat seems to do fairly well? And actually, there's two different versions. I'm thinking of Netcat and NCat, which was created. NCat uses I think its most useful reason of using NCat over Netcat is TLS and SSL implementation, where Netcat does not. Where when you're on a pen test, if you're using Netcat and you're exfilling data, you could be exfilling data over a clear text channel, which is not good. So using SSL and NCat instead of Netcat's good. But back to my original question, why do we need Netcat in PowerShell form?
Well, so honestly, the short answer is why not? The longer answer is that we actually have literally dozens of implementations of Netcat, and a lot of them have their own little twist or wrinkle. Some other notable ones that you didn't mention are like CryptCat, which really does a good job of doing point-to-point secured connections. SoCat, which has a very strange, at least to me, syntax, but is much more stable and can support multiple connections to the same listener. What the idea behind PowerCat was, if you are on a pen test and you have access to a machine that's got PowerShell on it, and it doesn't have Netcat or any of these other Netcat derivatives on them, why not leverage the PowerShell environment to facilitate Netcat type communications?
Okay. Isn't the new hotness to kind of restrict PowerShell as much as possible
Sure.
because 85 to 90% of users would not be using that in this case, so it would be considered almost an indicator that there's something going on.
Absolutely. In fact, on a default Windows 10 build, if you're running Windows Defender, the version of PowerCat that's out on GitHub will not run. There's a couple of things that will prevent it. Most notably is the ASMI plugin that Windows Defender snags.
Okay. So we have a couple of things in the show notes talking about the PowerShell boogeyman, how to defend against malicious PowerShell attacks. This was from 2018, but um, there's a number of tools in there that they have added: PowerSploit, invoke mimikatz, those kinds of things. Um, all these tools were created by, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, quote unquote, white hat hackers in this case, as either proof of concept or, hey, I've just found this cool thing, I'm going to go give a talk. Um, we talked with Dave a little bit about this, and I thought it might be good to get your opinion on offensive tool release and why you think it's a good reason or a good thing to do. So I would love hearing your thoughts on that matter.
Well, so I think that it's a mostly good thing. I've got somewhat of a nuanced view on it. I think that one of the things that I do agree with the OST restriction crowd is that they point out that it does very real harm to some of the lesser um, defended organizations out there. And they're right. Like you can't say boo against that argument. The Where we differ, though, is I and others believe that the long-term benefit helps society as a whole because as tooling, as techniques become more publicly available, defenders and researchers are able to really get under the the covers and see how these things actually tick. And they can pull them apart and learn to defend against them. And many of the defenses that, sticking with, PowerShell, for instance, a lot of the defenses that Microsoft has implemented are directly as a result of how the attacker community and the pen tester community were abusing PowerShell. And maybe Microsoft would have implemented things like script block logging at some future point, maybe, but they likely wouldn't have, at least as quickly, were it not for these tools being available. Now, I do feel bad for the mom and pop shop that gets hit and compromised, but that's part of the reason that we have regulatory frameworks. If you're going to be handling sensitive data, you get audited to see if you're high enough to ride the ride. Like when you go to the amusement park, you can't, no matter how much you want, you just can't get on the roller coaster if you're too small or if you're too fat or too old or whatever. You just can't do it. And I don't understand. One of the things that I probably don't yet understand and might not ever agree with is why the slowest and least fit in an organization or in an industry has to be the governor that nobody can go faster than. Right? Like that doesn't even make sense. Like imagine a highway where we can only go as fast as the slowest hoopty ride that's on that highway.
Well, that's theory constraints in a nutshell, isn't it? You can only go as fast as your slowest person, or you can only go as fast as your slowest process. So in this case, patching in many organizations is is that.
Mm-hmm.
So my other thought that I had while you were talking about Microsoft making these innovations, if PowerCat, if Netcat, if SoCat, if mimikatz hadn't come along. Is that helping to drive development of security processes? Because it seems like it's kind of an Ouroboros kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, I've created Mimikatz. Now Microsoft has to spend millions of dollars to try to make protections and put protections in place to fix Mimikatz or make those options available to people, which then they don't implement themselves. Would you argue that these kinds of tools that are created actually cost companies money, and they only make these changes and innovations when these kinds of issues present themselves?
I think that's a fair argument. I mean, a big part of running a company is you want to be as efficient as possible, and I don't think they would undertake any security engineering if they could get away with it. I mean, if I could wave a magic wand and nobody were evil, like, we wouldn't have firewalls, we wouldn't have antivirus. But because we live in a world where there's dirtbags that want to do us harm, we have to basically knuckle up and do battle. And a big part of how we do that is through the use of OST. And another thing, and maybe I'm scope creeping this argument, but I find it really weird that we're so focused on just OST. Like, why are we talking about, like, why isn't the broader debate talking about, like, the lull bins? As new lull bins techniques come out, you don't hear the hate. Like, that's really weird. And likewise, here's another thing, man. You caught me in a weird mood today. Which is saying something for me. But why aren't people, like, getting up in arms about new detection logics? Because every time, like, the Sigma project releases something, every time Snort releases a new log or a new detection technique, why not get upset with that? Because sure as hell, right? Like, I'm a small startup company, and I've got 3 virtualization servers, a NAS, and I'm at about 70 some VMs in my environment. When I do pen tests, I will test the fool out of those defenses. Why doesn't anybody get upset that the Sigma rules are out there? Because do you know that I download the Sigma set and I figure out how to assault machines that are running all the Sigma rules and not trip any of them? I know how to craft packets that will slide by Snort, slide by Suricata, and have minimal impact or visibility in Zeek. And if I'm just one dude in Columbus, Ohio, subcontractors, what the hell do you think an APT or an organized crime unit's going to do? I'm sure that there are arguments that the restriction crowd can bring, but so far they haven't even been talking about that, and I just don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Miss Berlin, I have no idea what a Sigma is. A Sigma YAR, like YAR rule?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just different formats.
Oh, really?
It's a vendor agnostic project. It's actually a really cool thing.
Definitely. Yeah, we're gonna start being able to ingest all the Sigma YAR stuff.
Nice. It's a vendor agnostic set of detection logics. It originally was designed for use in various SIMs, and since then it's been kind of expanded. It can work on, like, non-SIM environments that are doing, like, just raw log aggregation type stuff.
I was very disappointed because my boss and I bought a domain name because we had this very specific idea, and then who did Elk buy? Or Elastic. Crap, what's their name? I can't remember. But the endpoint thing that Elasticsearch bought. But we were gonna do, how there's exploit DB.
Yeah.
We're gonna do like a defense DB and tie everything back to exploit DB pages, right? Well, Elastic started doing pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So Elastic bought Endgame.
Yeah, that's who it is, Endgame.
Yeah. Just putting that in the show notes so people can read that if they wanted to. So would we need all of these endpoint security and ICS tool, not ICS, but Sigma tools and Suricata and Snort and IDSs and all that stuff if offensive tool release was not so prevalent, or am I wrong in that thinking? Is that kind of Pollyanna feeling?
I think we'd still
Well,
need them.
I don't.
Why is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, not just because there's not a public tool release doesn't mean there's not something out there that's still doing the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you, Amanda. Like, I don't think that. So, one thing I will agree that by having open release of tools, another point that I will concede to the restriction crowd is script kiddies will be able to use the tools. So if you didn't have the tools in the hands of script kiddies, there might be fewer attacks. But I
There's
mean,
not going to be fewer advanced attacks.
right. I mean, the attackers are going to build their own kit, and they're going to use commodity kit until it doesn't work. And then if they want in bad enough, they're going to use the advanced kit. And that's, a lot of the restriction crowd, and maybe I'm misrepresenting their argument, but a lot of the restriction crowd will tell you, but if that tool wasn't publicly available, they would have to use their own private stuff. And I don't buy that, because I think that they're vastly overstating how difficult it is to do the attack and build the attack. Like I don't know if any of y'all or your listeners have actually done buffer overflow ROP type attacks, but assuming that you don't have something like an EDR or like exploit Windows Defender exploit guard enabled, they're not that hard to find. They're not that hard to even really like craft. They are hard to make them work reliably and repeatedly, but like usually finding the condition of a machine or an app that can be attacked via buffer overflow or ROP or whatever, finding the condition usually takes 2-3 days. It's the weaponization of it that takes weeks or a month. And but like it's very, very doable. I mean, I think that a lot of the people who are advocating that these tools shouldn't be released have a gross misunderstanding of the level of difficulty involved in creating digital munitions. It is actually not that difficult. It is very different from things that they might have done, but like I think more people just need to do some offensive arts, and they'll understand that what they're advocating really isn't quite what they think it is. And I could be wrong. Maybe I'm misunderstanding their argument.
Mr. Betcher, you had a question?
Barrier to entry for, creating these tools will be much more difficult, but the attacks themselves would generally go on for a lot longer time unnoticed by the sophisticated attackers who can create their own exploit procedures, right? Or types or methods. That's my opinion. So I think it would be. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree 100% with you. If we didn't have that visibility to those tools, how would we even know?
Right. Yeah, and how would the antivirus and the defensive companies even know about all these techniques if it isn't widely available? Right. You can create an exploit for a maybe an application, and that exploit may translate in one form or another to other applications too, right? And that technique, that attack technique, maybe it's a new technique, may be able to be defended against in a wide variety of tools, just because these companies that put out like antivirus will put updates to their tools globally, right? So then companies that have those tools are automatically defended against them in large part, right?
That's fair. Yeah. So I'm trying to formulate a question here, because Miss Berlin and Mr. Betcher are both in the detection business, which means their stuff has to work properly for them to even know that there's an attack inside their network, and the damage is already done at this point. The user, the bad guy's already in the environment. There's nothing preventing them from wreaking more havoc, and at that point you're doing incident response. How much of a pain in the ass is an offensive tool release that, we're looking, what's 26th July. So we're looking at virtual Black Hat and DEF CON next week. So, what kind of new headaches and new hell are we going to, learn about from, what's coming up next week, and how is that going to cause y'all issues?
95% of the time, it doesn't matter, because there's things that are way easier than 0 days to get into everyone.
Well, okay, so what about
unless you're like the DoD or Fortune. I don't even know about Fortune 50.
Management.
It does.
Really
it doesn't bother me a whole lot.
Those things, right? So they'll hear about this new attack, and they're all worried about it. But meanwhile, you have desperate pieces of the company burning down with these simple things, right? So it's not a big deal when new exploits come out. The EDR companies are going to work tirelessly to make sure their tools can at least find the generic attack that they mentioned at Black Hat and DEF CON. But and then all these companies are better off for it, like I said. But there's some basic blocking and tackling that has to be done daily, right? That
and sometimes
aren't doing.
Sometimes there's easy-ish IOCs that you can look for, but as far as defense goes,
what kind of IOCs are you talking about? Generically, is it have you already gotten
registry entries or parts of packets or whatever?
Okay,
just depends.
I see. Okay.
So hunting for those things too. If you think, this is new, let me just go check just to make sure. It doesn't take that long.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work at CrowdStrike, and makes me sad because I just looked at this, the stock price, and it's now,
they're not great.
July. No, actually, it's really great.
Is it?
Oh yeah. July 9th, they hit a maximum at $117 a share. Sadly, I sold my stock at $61 a share because I had to close on a house in San Diego, but I would have been a damn near millionaire if I sold it on July 8th. Yeah. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I have to stop looking at that because it'll make me very, very sad.
I sold all my Tesla stock at 900. So
I sold all my Tesla stock in 2013, thinking nothing was going to happen with that at $13 a share. So I'm
that's not great.
Hindsight.
So if you didn't know, it's at what, 1,400 now? It was at 1,500.
Yeah, it was
a few days ago.
What's that? What? I guess you could update that joke. I used to be a millionaire, and Mama threw out all my baseball cards. I used to be a millionaire until I sold my Tesla stock at 17 instead of 1,500. So, whatever.
17, huh?
Yeah. So, okay, so that begs the question. So CrowdStrike stock is soaring right now because everybody's working at home. Billy Bob's letting his son Jimmy, surf porn on his work laptop, downloading, flash files and running, code of all kinds of shit. It's really, endpoint security and defense companies that are making money off of this stuff. So it actually, behooves them to want to have more offensive security tool release, I would imagine.
Well, there's certainly folks who benefit from the release of these tools,
And it's
just as there's certain companies that would benefit from the non-release of these tools. So yeah, there's, the people who benefit for them are things like your MSSPs, your boutique pen test firms, your um, shoot, even instructors like, hey, come learn, take this black hat, talk, or training and learn how
right,
this works. Heck, a lot of SANS tools wind up, these are tools that either SANS instructors or folks in the community made, and we show you how to use them.
right,
So let's be honest, there is a side of the industry that benefits from the release of these tools, but there's also a side of the industry that would benefit from the non-release of these sorts of tools. So cyber threat intel vendors, all of a sudden their attribution becomes easy peasy lemon squeezy because nobody can use these commodity tools all of a sudden. Also, everything that I hear about, there's this nebulous group that we're going to share the data with. Who are they? I don't know, but I sure as heck am knowing that I'm not going to be on the in crowd. The folks that are on that in crowd are going to have multiple legs up on everyone else. So they would benefit there. Certainly the developers of the software, the folks like Microsoft, Oracle, etc., that are the targets of these sorts of attack techniques are definitely going to benefit, because one thing that I really find a spicy, interesting problem is, all right, let's say we wave a magic wand and there's no more release, not just OST, but nothing, no lull bin attacks, no nothing, no offensive techniques go out, not a peep. What is going to make those vendors apply patches? Because like they've got no incentive at that point. All they have to do is get everybody in their good old boy network to shh, we're going to be quiet and everything's good. And if the developer of that technique says diddly boo, then they're going to send the assault lawyers out after them or do whatever. I don't know. Like I'm assuming that there would be some sort of enforcement mechanism for this. Otherwise, why wouldn't you release these tools? I don't know. This doesn't
right.
make sense.
And I would argue if you waved your magic wand and said no more OST tools, there'd be no Nmap, there'd be no burp, there'd be no Metasploit,
Well,
there'd be no
I don't know.
Netcat. Well,
I don't know.
Nmap
So,
is an offensive security tool. People
well,
can
but
use it to do naughty things with.
is it? So here's something that I'm a little hazy on,
Could be
and
just asset management.
Right. It'll all be asset management. That's right.
But I don't, right, like I've heard that things like Nmap are OST. I've heard that things like Metasploit is OST. But then I've also heard people say, well, no, it's not because, and then there's some like waving of hands, and I don't understand that. Like, here's one that if you want people to get real squirmy about, talk to them about Bloodhound, right? That one is used a lot by attackers to map out relationships in an Active Directory environment to find which machines and which user accounts you need to pop in order to get to, whatever your victory condition is. Domain admin, backup admin, schema admin, I don't care. But using Bloodhound, you can find those relationships. Is that an offensive tool? Well, it sure as heck was used for that for a very long time after its initial release. It was not ever intended to be an attack tool. And there's plenty of audit firms now that use it to find weird delegation problems. Is it OST? I don't know. Can it be used in evil ways? Yeah. And that's why I think this whole debate is just kind of goofy. It would be like us going like, are shovels bad? I can hit somebody over the head with a shovel. Shovel's bad. And you're like, well, I can dig holes real easy with them.
Right.
I mean,
No.
is PowerShell OST?
No, I would contend that it's not, at least by the way most people define it. I would think that what they would do is they would say certain PowerShell scripts and certain PowerShell modules are OST, But in my opinion, that you're slicing the hair real fine at that
'Cause
point.
that's just a language.
Yeah, well, it actually, what I think is happening is, again, maybe I'm misrepresenting it, but I think sometimes some of the people arguing for OST restrictions are splitting that hair so fine that all we got is the split left. Like, there's
Right.
no meat to this argument.
Right. And yeah, we don't want to ban all OST, just certain types, and then it's a slippery slope because somebody else will have a different opinion of which types of OSTs. I used the example of Nmap earlier because I had read that there's a Nmap point of proof of concept script for the Cisco vulnerability that came out on Wednesday. I believe it was it 2345? No, 30. CVE 2020-3452. So there, according to the Reddit NetSec article, there's an Nmap script for it. So it's extensible, allows you to make scripts. There's a ton of scripts that you can use. There's tutorials out there on using Nmap in pen tests and what have you. So in that case, somebody might go, well, Nmap's now an OST because people can use that to attack, or, Shodan could be used as an OST as well. I have Harbor Master's tweet in here, HRBRMSTR on Twitter. He had mentioned about the Cisco vulnerability 3452, and it came out on Wednesday, and he's like, congratulations, according to Shodan, only 5% of the people on Shodan actually patched their stuff between now and whatever. And I had actually thought it when it came out on like a Friday afternoon, as per what I expect normally to happen with customers like Cisco and Juniper and whatever, because they don't want their stock to take a hit. But yeah, this came out on a Wednesday, and that kind of brings us to another point that I want to make. But before I get to that one, I want to ask Mick about powercat. One of the things we talked about was defense against things like Netcat and powercat, or SOCAT or CryptCat, or all the cats in this case. What are ways that you can defend against that being used in your environment, other than just looking for PowerShell or whatever? I mean, that works for PowerCat, but maybe not Netcat.
Well, so there's a lot to unpack, and I'll do as best I can with the time you'll give me here.
Talk slowly, and be loquacious. It's all good. It's all good.
So here's the deal. You have either been doing your due diligence of doing layered security, and you have now multiple detects, or you've not. That's it. It's a binary thing. Now, here's the sad truth of the matter is most organizations have deployed a variety of tools, but nothing's talking in concert. And so if you think about it, the way I look at tools like PowerCat is it's like a jawbreaker, okay? And the thing I want to get is that center of that jawbreaker, and each layer of candy should be another layer of defenses. I'm going to have to, let's say, hypothetical, I'm coming in from the internet and I'm going to attack a workstation, okay? That means ideally I'm going to get past your perimeter firewall. I somehow have to get through your DMZ, and in your DMZ, I'm hoping you've got certain host protections there. I'm hoping you got IDS. I hope you're as lame as it is, NetFlow and firewall logs. The directionality of that attack should be caught already there. So then I have to go into some trusted network in order to finally get to the workstation network. When I go into that trusted network that the DMZ is allowed to talk to, I have to do that whole song and dance again, hopefully. And then finally, I have to get onto your workstation where my work dramatically kicks up, because you should have host-based firewall, host IDS, you've got exploit guard, PowerShell constraint mode, or other kinds of configuration hardening. The thing that boggles my mind, and I am picking my words very carefully here, the gross incompetence of defenders is staggering. They are lazy, they are weak, and they frankly don't belong in the industry. I don't know if you all saw it, but Brian Krebs released an article where they were talking about the number of people that are in the InfoSec industry and what percentage of them flat out could not show any level of skill in an interview. And then right next to it in that chart, there was a percentage of people that showed mastery. And here's the scary thing, folks. I think it was like 2 or 3 of those columns, only 2 or 3 of them, there were a percentage of people who showed mastery in double-digit percentages. Everyone else was single digits. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Every day I get up and I'm up most days at 5 a.m. putting time in my lab so that I can get better at detecting and attacking. And I get that my fire in the belly, my passion is rare, but I can't do this alone. And the thing that blows my mind is that this is an industry where you can get out of college, or heck, in a lot of cases, you don't even need that degree if you got the skills. You can make bank. And for a lot of parts of the world right now, that is like something that's sorely needed. We have about 4 million people of all skills in InfoSec worldwide, okay? Now that's talking the very noob level 1 analyst all the way up to the person that like directly plugs the Cat 5, into the back of the brain pan and is jacking into the matrix, okay? The thing is, that's 4 million people. The thing that's interesting is globally there are 3 million job openings, which means your entrance level to get into IT InfoSec is you pretty much have to have a pulse, and you can keep a chair from floating away. And there's a lot of people that are okay with doing that. And so when I look at the scoreboard that people are getting popped, that the dwell times are so long, I'm actually happy that we're doing as good as we are, because frankly, we suck. And so, don't use the tools because it's too hard. Fight me. Grow up. Like in no other war range would you dare go back and with a straight face say, but they were shooting bullets at us. Like, that's insane. It's unacceptable. We are at war. It is a cyber war. And it's a weird one. It's not a hot war. It's certainly not a cold war. We're at this weird lukewarm thing, and people are like, oh, you're not playing fair. Grow the hell up. Rant over.
That's
Mic
awesome.
drop. Mic drop. You know what? The one thing I want to say about that too is it really bothers me when people say that you shouldn't ever require passion to work in InfoSec, because that's just saying that you're forcing people to overwork and forcing people. No, that's not the same thing. I have a very, well, now anyways, healthy work-life balance. I didn't always, just saying. But passion and drive and the will to learn and do a really good job does not equal that you're going to be working 100 hours a week either.
Right.
Right?
And here's the deal. Like, I'm not expecting everybody to eat bites for breakfast like I do, okay? But here's something that, and this is true, okay? This is one of the wise words that my dad gave me when I was going to college is, if you want what you don't got, you got to do what you haven't done. And so, I think that InfoSec, there's some people who aren't healthy in how they approach things. And Lord knows I have not been balanced on the work-life side of things. But you do have to put the time in. And people will say, but that's gatekeeping. Well, it's not, because the material is out there, right? It's freer and more available than ever. The cost of barrier for entry is significantly easier than it ever has been. Now, also, the other thing is you got to understand that this is a journey, right? I've been doing this stuff for 20 years now, and I'm probably going to be doing it for another 20 if, the fates allow it, right? So don't think that like you're going to come in and be like even a pen tester, right? Start at a SOC. Start as a junior threat intel analyst. Actually, even better is started on help desk. That's where I started, right? Learn how these protocols work. Learn how firewalls work. Learn how OSs work. So there's a lot out there. You're not going to start off in InfoSec, but you
And if
sure
you
can
do,
get
you're going to
there.
be really far behind.
Yeah.
And you have to apply this stuff too. I've interviewed people who, hey, they've taken 4 or 5 SANS courses, right? They know of all this stuff, but they've never applied it. So you ask them a question and they've heard of it, but they don't know what really deep down what you're talking about. And so it takes that passion, like you were saying, to go and build things, figure out things, study things, take the time to learn things in InfoSec, right? Otherwise, again, you're just going to be holding your chair down from floating away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep.
I got triggered somehow. I don't know what happened.
I blame Brian Drake.
Yeah, I blame
Man.
Brian. That's going to be the tweet.
Damn it all. Great.
It's like the nose thing. I mean, you lost, man.
I'm sorry.
Not it.
I'm Brian. I'm disgusting. I make people rant about things. I'm so sorry. So, okay. So we'll move away from that for a little bit. We'll let you deal with that. So, this Cisco vulnerability that came out, in terms of when it came out on a Wednesday-ish afternoon Eastern time, which is roughly mid-morning my time in Pacific. Harbor Master had mentioned that it didn't get patched as quickly as it had. I had a counter argument, and I was prepping for the show tonight, and I had this question to Mick that a lot of companies are remote. 80+% of their people are remote, and this is a Cisco vulnerability on ASAs, which means it's a VPN thing, and a lot of orgs are more dependent than ever on their VPNs because of the remote work situation. So I argued that Harbor Master's metrics that only 5% of everybody who was on Shodan had patched is that's it, that's all that's done it. I would have argued that those 5% have actually done enough testing that they feel comfortable issuing the patch. The remaining have not, or maybe they just don't know what's going on there. What I'm wondering about is, with us working more remote, when we get these crushingly bad vulnerabilities, and it whether it be Palo Alto or Citrix or Cisco or Zoom or whatever, or something that directly impacts the ability for companies to do business even more so now, is there a greater need for testing? And if this continues to go on for any length of time, will we see more companies built to third-party test patches as they come out? And now I'll put that out to anybody, but that was my point. It's like you do have some companies out there that are still their whole mission in life is to support Windows XP, because hey, you still need Windows XP. We'll help you support them by backporting all of the patches from Windows 7, 8, 10. Whatever, to XP, and making sure that there's, good mitigations there. Will we see more companies that are like, hey, we'll test your patches for you so you don't have to worry about having an unsafe deployment? Or is that a pipe dream?
I think that would be a good thing to move toward. I think that, with this one, though, the thing that is kind of gnarly is, whenever you patch network infrastructure, that almost always requires a reboot.
Right.
How in the name of bloody blue blazes do you do that when everybody's remote? Right? Like, when's your maintenance window? 2 days? Right? Like, here's one for you. I have a client that I won't say what industry they're in, manufacturing. Let's make it real broad. Okay. They have a scheduled shutdown that will be happening the week before Christmas. What do you do? Like, seriously, they cannot have 1 second of downtime from after the shutdown is done to shut down next year. They literally, that's how they operate. What do they do? They're
I mean, as long as they know their risks.
Well, there's ways around that though, right? Like, you can have redundant. So, like, let's say like the VPN concentrator one was one that was quite the goat rodeo. Do you have, like, if you need to be able to patch your VPN concentrators without downtime to your users, that's doable. But what you need to have is a load balancer in front of the VPN, and then you have at least two VPN concentrators. You're basically doubling, you're actually like 2.1 timesing the IT spend in order to do like fast patching, like what some people are advocating.
You need also 2 load balancers.
Exactly.
Because you need to patch them.
Yep. Yeah, it gets ugly. Like, high availability is something that I specialized in for a while. I was a sysadmin at a network where we could not tolerate downtime at all. And we always joked that a lot of people like shoot for 5 nines availability. We said 5 nines was just as good as 9 5s for us. And so, like, some places cannot tolerate downtime at all. And so that gets really expensive. And one of the things that I'm seeing is that there's these expectations, but the investment isn't matching. Like, there's a pretty sizable delta. Now, to your point, Brian, I do think that vendors out there that do patch validation are absolutely needed. I mean, I know I'm dating myself here, but back in the mainframe days, there were folks at so when IBM released patches for the mainframes, there was a division within Unisys, and then there was another one. I want to say it was like one of the accounting firms. I forget which one, but they actually validated the patches and would tell you, and it was a subscription service on whether or not you could apply the patch, or if there were known issues, like what you should do to help mitigate them. It was real bizarre, and something that we probably could go back to doing.
Yeah. So my thought was, and we talked a little bit about things like change management before the podcast, and I was talking about my wife who's going to be taking the ADCAR stuff. She's taking an ADCAR class in the next few days. It's a 3-day class. It's SANS level pricing, so it's legit. We were talking about acceptance and awareness and desire, which are the first 2 letters of ADCAR. You must be aware that there's a problem and have a desire to fix it. What we were talking about there with multiple redundancies sounds like we're trying to put a tool to a process instead of the other way around, trying to make sure the process and then find a tool that fits it, or find a technical solution, which my wife has been telling me that we often look for a technical solution instead of one that is a bit simpler. Patching is a technical response to a problem, but we patch only because we often, don't have a lot of information. I don't know. I'm trying to remember which one it was, if it was the Palo Alto bug, but there was a lot of confusion about its severity online. whether or not it was a 10 or whether or not it was, something less, who uses an identity provider that isn't using SSL, etc. I actually got email from the Palo Alto folks, but do you think we need to have better communication in terms of what vulnerabilities are, and we should probably not be getting our vulnerability information from the dark readings and bleeping computers of the world?
That's a leading question in the extreme.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
my
go
problem is
ahead.
unless you don't pay a lot of money to get access to that information, because even the information that we got, we have a number of folks on our Slack channel, and they told us about this one that was coming up, and they said all the guy got from his MSSP, he had to get it from his MSSP, he didn't even get it from Palo Alto, was that you need to patch this thing, it's level 10, it's really, really bad. And I was like, well, what did Palo Alto say? And they're like, well, they don't issue stuff like that. It's embargoed out the ass. So before you knew what 2020-2021 was, you could go and search for it, but all you would get from NVD and all those was, oh, this is under embargo. When they decide they want to disclose it, it's done. From what I got from the Palo Alto guy, that number was issued like late October, early November. So they'd been sitting on this bug for roughly 7 months before they'd issued it. So that bug has been out there for 7 months. If people knew about it, so I mean, how do we improve communication? Because the ways that we're now communicating are different, but the ways that companies and vendors are communicating security information has not changed. So it sounds like that there needs to be a change there in some respects. I'm welcoming ideas.
Well, clearly there needs to be, because the status isn't quo, as they say in Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the fix is. I mean, I will say that I kind of like, really what we need, rather than severity numbers, which, let's be honest, those are horrible. Like,
Right.
I mean, I think that they're a good effort, and I'm not poo-pooing the folks that do these things, but like, what's a 10 on your network might be a 5 on mine, and what might be a 2 on your network might be an 11 on mine. Like, it's
Right.
a headshot. So
Right.
what we need to do is make it so that there's a way that those scores become a little more granular, and we've moved toward that in some ways, where they break down like why and how they rate them, what they give. But that's the nuance that I think is missing, because like, if you could tell me more of like what it means to me, that would help a lot. Like, it would be, what we got right now is like somebody saying, well, today the average temperature in the entire state of Ohio is going to be 80 degrees. And everybody's like, sweet. But, up on Cleveland, it's nice and cool, where down in Cincinnati, it might be hot. And it doesn't help anyone. And that's where we're at. We've boiled it down to this bland tapioca thing that nobody wants to eat.
Right. And so just for my own edification, the person who had emailed me, fairly high title name, it's a senior director. I asked, I said, thank you for the feedback. It was like, I listened to some of your episode on the Palo Alto vulnerability. You're speculating on the date of discovery to be in December 2019 based on CVSS date. They said December 4th was when they allocated us a large block of CVE IDs for us to use in 2020. So apparently Palo Alto gets a block of CVE numbers that they can use. That I didn't know this. So it's like Microsoft gets 2020, 5,000 to 7,000. Palo Alto has, 2,000 to 4,000 or something like that. That's what it sounds like, and I did not know that was a thing. So I wrote back, thank you for the feedback, and they said, regarding the CVSS score of 10, as per CVSS guidelines, we should score it for the worst case scenario. As long as it is supported configuration, we always expect our customers to be deploying products in that configuration. Whether such configuration is common or rare does not get factored into the base score. We do not want to second guess what our customers may be doing and misrepresent the severity of a vulnerability. The issue is in a frequently used authentication module, but the impact can be different in different situations. If you're not using SAML, the score is 0. If unauthenticated attackers gain access to the firewall management UI, then the base score is 10. If unauthenticated attackers gain access to the VPN or protected network, where the impact really depends on what is on the protected network, for example, database server, with no authentication, then that's as worse as a full database compromise. So that was the explanation they gave in terms of why it's a 10. My thing is I worry about, people only see the 10 and they don't understand the nuance of it, like this person had done. And I thank them for, I don't know if it's breaking ranks, but I thank them for reaching out. I've actually tried to see if they could come on the show and discuss with us some more, but I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I can always reach out and ask again. But yeah, it's just interesting, the CVSS scores and what people don't understand about them and how nuanced they actually need to be. I think the bigger issue is, if you do have controls in, how much does that actually lower it? And you have to probably do it like like this person had mentioned. If SAML's not being used for authentication, then you don't have an issue. So you really need to understand, like Ms. Berlin said, you need to understand your asset management, what's going on in your network, what services you're using. When you're threat modeling, understand what services are connected to what and how, and then you can understand the actual vulnerability as it is written. But yeah, I don't know. I just think there was a lot of confusion, especially on like that Palo Alto one, because people were like, well, who doesn't use a self-signed cert or something in their TLS, SAML identity providers or whatever. And, and then there's the other 83% of the world that don't understand what SAML is anyway. And, just assuming, blinky box equals good. So, yeah, I don't have a good answer to that. And I've done a lot of vulnerability management in the day. And, I had CISOs that were asking me questions about O-Days that had came out. And they're like, well, is Tenable seeing that? I'm like, well, no, Tenable can only see what they have detection mechanisms for. So, no, they're not going to see that brand new, CVSS 10 in Tenable probably for a couple of weeks. So I'm like, oh, we need to get on that. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. So.
Well, so one of the things that I try to do when I consult with clients on this is I'll have a heat map of, here's the attacks that you really should be worrying about, that we know about. And here's their criticality, and here's like basically where your soft underbelly is. And then, to the extent that I can, what I know of their infrastructure, what I know of the attack, I say, hey, this isn't going to hit the soft underbelly. I know this is getting the press right now, but for the way you've got things set up, it take care of it. Yeah, absolutely. But let's focus on these things that are like real concern, because that's the thing that I just don't, I would love metrics on what percentage of attacks are from O-Days, or even attacks that are, let's go 2 weeks old. I'm willing to bet that most of them aren't. Now, I remember one year, the Verizon data breach report, and this is a couple years ago, they did have it, and it was something like most of the attacks were 30 plus days out. And
I know it ramps up real, like, after POC is released, like when Citrix came out, right? Like, that was super easy to detect, and we saw a crazy amount of them, just random tests against every public IP we were monitoring. But then, like, once you scan the internet, like, nah.
Yeah.
Well, Mick, it's like what you said. Hey, this thing may be, let's say, for example, an 8, but we're really not affected by that because we have these other implementations, these other mitigations. Well, to go back to what you said about how 66% of cybersecurity candidates don't know the first thing about common exploit techniques, how are they going to make an educated judgment on whether or not you need to patch. They're not. Okay, so it goes back to hiring qualified candidates to manage your vulnerabilities, so to speak, and to be able to tell you whether or not it's something you have to worry about or all hands on deck.
I would argue the telling you part is the bigger issue that we've got there. We have a hard enough time trying to figure out impact because we don't even know what's in our environment, right? If you have are you using SAML on your Palo Alto boxes? Do you even have Palo Alto boxes? You might have some leftover legacy kit from, 5 acquisitions ago that may be running on your network, and, you're still using that, but you don't exactly know who's maintaining that. The Cisco one, they're the 15% that is left on Shodan that hasn't patched. It may be that they've pled their case to management. Manager's like, yeah, we can't patch that right now because one, it's only a 7.5. So is that really a bad thing? And, our maintenance window's in 2 weeks. And is it really that big a deal? Do we need to worry about that? So, we have an issue, I think, as a community of trying to, we don't discuss impact, I think, well enough in some cases, or we have trouble getting that across to people who are in control of, the process of patching those things, whether it be your change management board or your boss who you have to go to, get that time to patch.
Well, here's something even more terrifying, right? I had one where I was arguing to a logistics company. I can call them that, okay? A client in the logistics space. And I was like, hey, this exploit, this thing is going to hit you like a 2-ton stone dropped on your forehead. And they're like, yeah, we totally get it. And I was like, and here's like some ideas on how you can solve for that. And they're like, yeah, we totally get it. And I'm like, well, go do. And they're like, so about that, here's these other 5 things that are on fire. We're going to be able to get to this in 2 weeks. And I'm like, wow. So part of the problem isn't that we're not appropriately advocating issues. It's a lot of it is many folks, unfortunately, like when we joke about people doing stuff on a shoestring budget, they're like, y'all got shoelaces? Like, I don't have even those. And so, like, I don't even know what to tell those sorts of folks, right? Because they're scrambling for every single dime. And how do you solve for that? Because, I'm assuming actually now that most management folks are reasonably bright. And, this IT InfoSec thing, it's been quite a while since, like, the Target breach that kind of got everybody to wake up and start thinking about this. So they now, I think, are getting it. It's just the cold facts of the matter are, and a lot of times this doesn't hit high enough on their everything else is on fire stack. What do you do? I mean, and that's where it gets rough.
Yeah, it's really hard to re-architect all of those years of bad design.
Tech debt is for real.
Yeah.
Yep. Ms. Berlin, Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions for Mr. Douglas? Because he's got to get up in the morning and go teach a class. He's going to be tie-tie.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I have to go to bed too, man.
Okay. All right. Mick, any closing thoughts, sir, before we let you go?
Well, I guess one thing that I'd say is, Egypt made this tweet a while back that really kind of helped reinvigorate me. He said, everybody's always talking about how the attackers only need to get one way in, and that's true. But then he said that as soon as they get in, the equation flips, and the defenders only need to detect once or block once and do something about it, right? So
and then the rest is IR's problem.
Well, right. But right now the thing is, that's how you get better, right? You just start understanding that sort of stuff, and then you get faster at it. And that's the thing that I don't want folks to like walk away from this thinking that like OST tools are bad or that offense is always going to win, because they don't always win. They'll win the battle, but the only way that they win the war is when we give up. So keep on fighting, keep on learning, keep on trying to measure things. And if things feel too hard, like go and do something that's easier and make things less painful so that each day you're reducing that drag and getting faster and faster at things. And in a while, you'll get something that actually approximates a decent defense. And understand that there is no such thing as being done. This is one of the best fields to be in because we've got job security pretty much forever. There's always going to be new attacks. There's going to be new tooling, new infrastructure rolled out. We're always going to be defending it. So, take heart. This is a real fun industry to be in, and it's a fairly stable one. So go out, kick butt, and, treat this job serious because it actually does matter, right? Like there's a lot of jobs where at the end of the day, like people are just kind of like, well, did I do anything meaningful? And then like here right now in this point in time, infosec jobs really do matter. Go out and treat your job serious because it is serious. So have fun.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So Miss Berlin, going to go to you. You're doing some more IRD, defend and detect. I can't use that one. I don't want to go to C&D from Wizards of the Coast. So it's defend and detect workshops. Where are you doing that?
So do you want to know the name of our new company?
Yes, please.
Ready?
Uh-oh.
Cybersecurity Conference Training, LLC.
Wow. So it sounds like InfoSec Education Foundation, LLC. Okay. Well, you know what?
We now both have shell companies.
Fantastic. I can funnel all my money through either one of our companies. It's based out of the Caymans, so
exactly. So we'll be giving it for hopefully if anybody signs up, because turns out that there's not a whole lot of people signing up for training right now.
Is that because of budgets and such?
I mean, Strand's training doesn't even really have that many people at his own conference, so it's not great.
I want to ask.
We still have
Mick,
2 months.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
But so we're giving it at Wild West Hacking Fest and at Hackfest CA remotely. I just spent 10 hours with my training partner yesterday building our infrastructure, rebuilding our infrastructure. And we're going to be testing that out in a couple weeks with a select few people. Okay. So that should be super fun.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, Theater of the Mind, I just raised my hand because she said, hey, do you want a spot in the class? And I was like, yes, please. So if I don't get, enough people, I mean, I only asked so far like 4 or 5 people, but we're going to test it out with like 20, because when we gave it in West Virginia, we had a very, very small infrastructure in Azure and brought it to its knees. Really?
Turns out when you have like 30 people trying to password spray against one domain controller, you run out of resources.
Capacity planning.
Right.
Capacity planning.
So we have beefier stuff now.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Okay.
And we're gonna start offering it by ourselves.
On the breaks like Slack.
I mean, honestly, I would rather get 100% of the proceeds and just do it all online as opposed to getting like 40% and doing it at a conference.
Okay. Well, I know of an outlet that would allow you to do that potentially. So yeah, if you're interested.
Because then we can also make it cheaper for everybody.
Word. Okay. So Mick, I have a question. Ms. Berlin said that there's some issues with training. I'm not asking you to speak as a representative of SANS, but have you seen that in the classes that you've been teaching recently, where it seems like there might be less budget or less people?
Well, I think that Right now, with the instability of the markets, I'm seeing a lot of people just fearful of training, and it seems, I think, that most people are all hands on deck, period, on just like, let's keep this infrastructure up and running.
Right.
So I think that there's a desire for the, techies to train, right? We always want to train, but management just can't afford the time away from training, regardless of how little it is.
Right.
Also, putting on my management hat, if I had limited funds and, my business is having a horrific year or quarter and looking
Short
at
budgets.
a couple more year, maybe a year of market instability, am I wanting to spend on things like training? I don't know. And
Right.
so I think that the companies that do invest and are taking a long-term view are still doing that sort of stuff, but some folks won't or can't. And
Right.
so, I can't speak to numbers for anyone really, but I do understand that, times is tough, as they say.
Sure.
Yep.
No, that makes sense. And you can only do what the market will bear. So if you, yeah, training budgets would probably be the first thing in a management position to slash if that kept 5, 6 more people on, or whatever. So I can understand that. So Mr. Betcher, I know you've got a lot going on. Mr. Goff spoke at B-Sides, Oklahoma about
Yes,
LogMD. How did that go?
went great. He also
Yeah.
spoke at SANS,
Oh, very cool. Okay.
DEFR, SANS DEFR, which was free, and he had about, I don't know, at least 10,000 people. I think the attendance was about 20,000. I don't know the
Damn.
exact numbers, but yeah,
Fantastic.
lots of people signed up.
And they were recorded and you can download them.
There you
Okay.
go. You can download them as
Nice.
well.
Yeah. All right. And so you've got some LogMD stuff, and you're still doing the incident response podcast, yeah?
Yeah. In fact, I was on an engagement the other day, and unfortunately the logs rolled because there was some human error involved. They didn't catch this thing in time, and it had been too much time had passed. But luckily, I was able to download the System Resource Utilization Monitor, or SRUM database, which is available on Windows 10 by default. It goes back 90 days. And I was able to find the infection vector that way pretty quickly.
No kidding.
So yeah, you can basically get that filed and parse through it, which luckily there is a tool that can do that.
Very nice. Is that a tool that I know of that does the SRUM thing? Or
Yes.
is that which one is that?
You know it well. It's one that I wrote.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was a power toy or something like that. Okay, so you
Yeah. So yeah, check out SRUM. It can be your friend, especially since, for example, HIPAA will say, if you had ransomware, you now have to prove that data was not stolen. So how do you do that? Well, the SRUM database can tell you exactly how much data was sent and received for each process, which is very handy, because then you can prove, without a doubt, that this much data left or did not leave this particular computer. And if they have a problem with that, they can take it up with Microsoft, right?
That's amazing. That sounds like yet another show that we need to do on, maybe discussion of what SRUM is. So cool.
Yes, we could.
Right on. All right. Cool. So yeah, I mentioned the BreakSec Slack in passing there. We have a great little community there where people get on, they trade ideas, discussions. There's DFIR talk. We have a threat intelligence and a threat hunting channel. We actually have separate ones for that. We have a book club going on. We have regular educational classes and videos going on. PonySec runs through various web application security items. And, we have classes if people are interested in just getting on and talking about something. We have a mental health channel as well, and independent of Miss Berlin's mental health hackers. But, she has a Slack too. She can probably tell us about in a minute. If you're interested in joining the Slack, you can send us a DM to our official Twitter handle for the podcast, Breaksec, BRAKESEC, or you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you to our patrons. All of them give a little bit in the tip jar every month for hosting fees, Libsyn, Zoom, domain registering, which is actually more expensive than you might think, and other ancillary items that help keep a podcast running and a community together. So we appreciate all of their help for that. We also are on all of the major podcast apps. I just actually told Libsyn to start publishing us on Amazon Music, I believe. So Amazon Music is going to start publishing podcasts as well. So I've asked Libsyn to go ahead and start publishing us on there. So if you have an Amazon Music account or Spotify, I believe we're on Pandora as well. You can check us out on any of those favorite places to go. So, or you can go to just breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. All right. So before we go, Ms. Berlin, how would people find you and Mental Health Hackers and, security conference training? What was it? InfoSec?
Cybersecurity Conference Training, LLC.
That's it. Cybersecurity Conference Training, LLC. Okay. How would they find you to ask about the tabletop exercises or Mental Health Hackers or anything?
So I am at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. We have both InfoSec roleplay and cyber roleplay on Twitter, and at Hackers Health for the mental health hacker stuff.
Cool. All right. Mr. Betcher, how about you if they wanted to ask about the SRUM log? It's not Scrum log, it's SRUM, so SRUM log.
SRUM database, yes.
Okay, database. So how would they, if somebody wanted to ask you more about that, how would they find you?
On Twitter, I answer my DMs at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHER, PWNED.
Okay. And Mick Douglas, of course, is at Better Safety Net, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he's venerated SANS instructor. He did my murder board for when I was, little shaver in the SANS Institute's 504 stuff. So he's been there a long time. If you are interested in taking a class from him, he's definitely worth the time. Go and do that. Or if you need, boutique security training and purple team stuff, feel free to reach out to him on Twitter and ask him that too.
He's pretty good.
He's okay. Fair to middling. Fair to sorry. Anyway, so all right, well, that's it for Breaking Down Security this week. Everyone be safe out there. Buy yourself a leaf blower if you can. Take care of yourselves because you're the only you have, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.